Hi, welcome everyone. And thank you for joining today's session. My name is Bianca, and I'm the project manager for DigiConnect. We're excited to have you all today. Now, today's executive virtual boardroom is on data-driven government and is presented by a hosting partner, Constellation Consulting Group and Oracle. Now, today's session is going to talk about how a data-driven government can boost the effectiveness of decision-making processes. Before we get into it, I would like to take you through some housekeeping rules. Now, as you can see, since this is a virtual environment, we would like to request everyone to have their cameras on. But if you're not in a suitable place to do so, not a problem. Now, as you've noticed, all participants are muted. Now, this is only to avoid any background noises and any disturbances, so we have smooth communication. Now, also, moving forward, if you have any questions, and now there's a chat box below, feel free to post any questions during the presentation and we'll ensure everything is answered too. Now, because it's a virtual environment, we understand there are network issues. So for any case you get dropped out of the call, then you can just use the same link that you have to join back in and then we'll admit you right away. Now, before we get into it, I'd like to take you to the flow of today's event. We are going to be starting with the, sorry, can you see my screen? Sorry about that. Before we get into it, now the agenda is going to start with an opening discussion by Constellation Consulting Group, followed by an interactive panel discussion by leaders and thought experts. Followed by that, we'd have a Q&A session. As mentioned earlier, please post your questions in the chat box below and we'll ensure that they're answered too. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for the day, Alp Barak, Managing Director for Constellation Consulting Group. Alp, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Bianca.
You're welcome.
So let's get this rolling. So I'm going to share my screen and first of all, talk very briefly about Constellation Consulting Group and what we do at Constellation. So we are a specialized consulting firm in data-driven solutions, and many of the region's government and public sector organizations over the years have enjoyed our data-driven solutions. So recipients of these solutions includes Department of Finance, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Minister of Finance of UAE, Saudi Arabia, and many government departments and many public sector organizations. So we are really proud to be partner of these esteemed organizations and provide them their data-driven solutions. So let's talk about, first of all, before we get into details, what kind of when we say data-driven government, so what kind of data we actually talk about, right? And so it's not just the data in your ERPs, as you may appreciate. So this is the data, actually what we call organizational data. So you produce this data on a daily basis. Every second, every tick of a second, basically, you get new records in your ER, in your CRM, in your HCM systems, in your revenue management systems, project portfolio management systems, etc. But it's not just that, right? I mean, because we have citizens, and citizens also produce data as they travel, as they use public transportation, as they go to hospital, healthcare system. And when they also enroll into education system, when they travel, when they receive their passports, IDs, and when they use their IDs, so they produce these citizen data as well. And this data actually has many angles. So it's not just transactional data; it's got demographics built into this information, this citizen data. And on top of it, we've got social data, right? I mean, so people. Your citizens, your employees, the public, they use social media and they produce this social, information, which is basically their sentiments, which is their feedback. They're all stored in the social media. And it's not just limited to it. We've got also machine-generated data, which is basically, Internet of Things. So all the equipments that we have, in which we have a chip, they basically, keep on producing this data. So while we're producing so much data, do we actually use this data effectively to turn them into value-making, decisions, to turn them into actual, value? So I think, today we are going to seek an answer to this question and also talk about ways of maybe achieving this. And in today's panel, we have Hesham from Dubai Department of Finance, and he'll share his experience with us as well. So let's talk about data a bit further. So we've got the data analytics systems, but data analytics systems haven't arrived to this stage in a day, overnight, right? I mean, it went through certain stages of evolution. So these started with, first of all, descriptive analytics. So descriptive analytics sought the answer to what happened. So tell me what happened, basically. And the descriptive analytics gives you the answer of what happened. This is the most primitive, maybe, medium of data analytics. And the next step in the evolution was diagnostic analytics. And here we are seeking the answer of why did it happen? So we've got the results and why we arrived at these results. Basically, we are now seeking the answer to these questions. And the next step in the evolution is predictive analytics. Now we have the historical data, we know what happened, we know why it happened, and using this two information, can we generate a pattern and maybe create a trend line or create a trend curve, and then try and estimate what will happen under certain circumstances, right? And so predictive analytics will actually give answer to this question. So this is why and how we use predictive analytics. But it's not just it just doesn't stop there, because we are living in the age of AI and machine learning, and obviously these are effectively utilized. And we have now the new medium of data analytics, which is called prescriptive analytics. This actually tells us not only what will happen, but also what we should do under those circumstances, which of our actions, what kind of actions will produce the best outcomes or the most optimum outcomes if we do those actions. So this is the new era of prescriptive analytics. But if you look into our future, we are actually moving towards fully autonomous analytics, during which actually we will not need to even take decisions. Machines and maybe AI and computers will take the decision, and they'll just tell us to do it, and we will just oblige. And it has actually started happening. If you just look around, like in the stock market, for instance, there are bots deployed in traders, and they just give certain comments, and machines actually take actions, and we just sit and watch and observe the movement of the funds. So having seen all these stages and evolution of this data analytics, now let's see how these stages of analytics impact our decision-making process. So we talked about data, and we talked about descriptive analytics, and the answer we were getting here was to the question of what happened. Here, in this type of analytics, we need a lot of human input. So we have to provide our inputs to turn data outcomes into decisions. So in this kind of, therefore, analytics, I mean, there's human involvement quite significantly, and actions will be taken after our decisions. In diagnostic analytics, however, human input is reduced, because now we know why it happens, so we don't have to really, go and seek those questions to those answers. So because we know why it happened, so we can take only corrective actions and take decisions and action them. And in predictive analytics, our human input is now getting reduced. So in the decision-making process, machines are now getting utilized, and they advise us, they start giving us directions. And then using these advices, using these inputs, we actually, utilize the outputs of AI, and then take our decisions a lot easier. In the prescriptive analytics, human involvement may actually be completely eliminated, and it can be actually overtaken by machines completely. And this is what we call, decision automation. And artificial intelligence can come on board and take decisions, and then even to some extent they can action on them. So this is how data analytics evolution is impacting the decision-making process and the human element within this process. Now, if you look at the current organizations, especially in public sector and government, we are a bit stuck in these two boxes, really. I mean, we aren't able to see much, examples, many examples beyond these two boxes. I mean, we are still doing descriptive and diagnostic analytics and still utilizing a lot of human input in our decision-making process. I mean, if I have to share this, my personal experience. Now, how to turn data into value? There are these, standard processes. There are these like standard steps of like, first finding the data. So we need to identify where the data is. We talked about, these data points, and we can just identify the data points. And next we should fetch the data. We should collect the data. And after collecting the data, we should cleanse and transform the data. And after cleansing and transforming the data, the next step, we process the data. Here, where we will utilize basically the algorithms and machine learning, etc. And we will analyze the outputs, and based on these outputs, we will take decisions. So these are basically the standard steps of data to value, kind of like value cycle. And how can public sector basically benefit from all this? So they can, first of all, create multi-scenario budgets against various shock levels, right? I mean, so we've all experienced COVID and the shocks it brought along with it, and we are experiencing some, geopolitical threats as we speak. And we can actually create multi-scenario budgets against these various levels of shocks. We can analyze beyond financials, measure the impact on outcomes. We don't have to, restrict our analysis, analytics to financials. We can actually go beyond that. We can optimize the usage of public resources as a, outcome of all these points. And we can also improve decision and legislation cycles overall in the public and government domain. So these are all what I had to share. Bianca?
Thank you so much, Al, for that interesting presentation. Now, I would like to call upon two more speakers for our interactive session. I'd like to call upon Hisham Ahmed Ismail, Head of Projects and Program Management Department of Finance, Dubai, and as well as Gary Brocklehurst, ERP Business Development and Strategy Leader for Oracle. Welcome, Gary and Hisham. Alp, you can take over.
Thank you, Bianca.
Great to be here.
Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you, Bianca. So in this, section of the panel, I mean, we would like to, extract as much as we can from Hisham and Gary, and we will ask questions to both Hisham and Gary, and we'll ask them to share their insights. So maybe as the first question, I can start with Hisham. So we know Department of Finance has been undertaking major, digital transformation initiatives. So can you talk about, Hisham, about your strategy and its objectives, and what you have achieved so far, in terms of your digital transformation strategy?
Thank you, Alp, and it's actually a very good topic, and it is very near my heart. Actually, I started working with data since like 2002. I did my first data warehouse kind of project in 2002, and it was like. That time people were like reluctant to say why you need this, and now I believe everybody's talking about data, and everybody's talking about business intelligence, and the all organizations have now at least one or two business intelligence solutions in their portfolio. Let me share my screen first. I will take you through our journey. So actually, our first objective let me just introduce what the Department of Finance is doing for people who are not as part of government of Dubai. We are like central government, like Ministry of Finance for ministries, but we are for government entities like Dubai Police or RTA or municipality. So we are working as a central government of all finance operations. So our role when we start this reform and modernization program actually back in 2004 is to have advanced shared financial solutions, which can be shared across all Dubai government entities without the need of each and every entity go by itself and have their own solution, which may or may not be as governed or as even per the quality required as possible. Yeah. So we started our journey back in 2014 to have this vision of having a shared financial solution across the government. Why is this? To give at least the governance required for a central agency, as well as to have the financial data availability for us and for the entities as well. We started this in 2014. We start to have also some sort of financial and technical support for the entities to give them not only the solution as a technical solution, but also the business around it. So when we started, let's say, budgeting, we provided budgeting consultant first as business, and then we start the solution. Similar happened for all our applications. So we start also to do some finance process automation for the finance processes across the government, as well as we start even adopting some of the new fintech kind of solutions, blockchain and others, and even a POC level or on a more level like this. So let me just go through our solution portfolio as overall. Of course, our base framework, which we started from, was the GRP, which is our ERP system, which is centralized ERP system that has been even designed and built from Dubai Smart Government or Dubai Digital Authority, as it is called right now. It is starting back in 2002. It has all the transactions of all government entities, currently like 66 entities. So this was our base, which we built on top of it. So if you can see, all the other applications are either talking to GRP or taking data from GRP. And at the end, this is the main kind of solution that takes and give all the data for all other solutions. We started back in 2014 by building our planning and budgeting solution, which we call it SFP, Smart Fiscal Planning. That was what we call it actually our flagship product, because everybody has to have a budget. So this gives us a lot of actually power for the entities because they have to submit their budgets to get the funds and everything. So it gives us actually the power to start initiating and enforcing the change on the modernization of this sector. Along with this, also we started our even financial modernization like EPSAS projects and PPP and other business-related projects, which actually come back and implemented in the systems itself. So during the planning and budgeting itself, as you mentioned in the data preparation itself, we had to do a lot of data cleansing actually to reach to the point that to reach to the objectives of that solution itself. So we started in 2014 until maybe 2018. We rolled out to 90 plus entities. All these entities has all the budget planning, preparation, execution, as well as new initiatives, and all are done through the system. Then from 2018 and onwards, we start to add more to this portfolio. We start with service costing. Again, we started with only business. We start the costing practice itself, how to do costing and all, and then we start implementing the solution. Then we had a major initiative, which is treasury management system, managing all bank accounts, related transactions of all entities, like 400 plus bank accounts managed in Dubai government through one system, which is the treasury management system. We call it Khazna. And then lately we did the pension administration system, which is managing all military pension, because Dubai government, other than the federal agency for managing the pension, JIPSA, we manage the military pension fund here in DOF. So this solution manage all the pension related kind of from contribution till the pension itself, processing all the services related to it. Along the side, when we start, even from the SFP days, we started another layer, which is our business and analytical and business intelligence layer, which we call it Bayan. That solution, as you can see, all other solutions are feeding data to that solution. Because at the end, as you mentioned in your early presentation, the decision makers, they want to see at the end, all top management, they don't want to see nitty-gritties of how many I spend in that account or in that account or the cost center. At the end, they need to know how we are funding the government overall as Dubai government, and then all the related data, whether it is costing, whether it is planning and budgeting, treasury, or pension. Alongside, of course, we did a lot of other solutions related to managing these, like ITSM system or corporate performance management or chatbot and RPAs and all these things. But this is the core pillars of our, let's say, portfolio that lead to have at least a feasible financial data that can help the decision makers give some decisions based on facts, not based on subjective kind of decisions.
Yeah. This was very insightful. Thank you very much, Hisham. You have really come a long way. I mean, in a very short time, it seems. I mean, you started, I think, in 2014, and within just, I think, 6, 7, almost 8 years. We're on the year 8 now. Then you come a very long way. So may I ask you maybe from this point onwards, like what's next in your journey, Hisham? So what are we going to see in your digital transformation moving on?
Actually, as I told you, like from business side, we finished all the puzzles. All, let's say, core businesses are covered in a digitalized mode. So previously, some of these processes was not there. It was either not there or it was managed by manual kind of operations. Like our treasury team used to go to each and every bank and download the statement each and every day and then collect the cash, let's say, position for one day. Like it took them maybe 3-4 hours to do that. But now they just log into the system, they will see one number, for example. So our next actually is working with all this collective data, because again, when we build our dashboard, we didn't build a very sophisticated, let's say, data warehouse or anything. We built it based on data lakes kind of approach, to give us a quick, let's say, release. So because at the end, the business people, they will not wait 2-3 years until you finish all your data warehouse, let's say, homework, and then give them the final product. They want to see something in hand. So we started with the data lake kind of approach. So all the next kind of, let's say, our next, we call it a project alpha, which is combine all this information into a matter of, with, of course, a lot of data cleansing and data correlation, along with even preparing our team to have, let's say, our statistical people to start learning data science, and also in order for us to be able to use this data into more predictive kind of way. We have a lot of predictions in Hyperion, for example. We use, as you know, like we do forecasting for budgets, for revenues. Even we are having a lot of modules right now for, let's say, monthly cash forecasting. But still, we didn't reach to that level, which you mentioned in your slide, by which actually right now it's all about like the machine will give you some sort of prediction and you will either take it or adjust it. But we need to reach to a position like to have a machine or an AI kind of algorithm that tell us like, yes, next year this entity should have this much of a budget because of 1, 2, 3. Or let's say in the treasury kind of area, which has a lot of AI let's say ideas, like at least to know what is the best use of cash. Because you have cash in, you have cash out, you have debts, you have loans, you have deposits. So what should I do? Should I have 1 billion in my bank account now? What should I do with it? Whether to pay the debt and save the interest, or put it in a fixed deposit, for example, or keep it because I have another payment next week, so I should not do it. So this kind of like AI, we call it Project Alpha, plus the predictive or the dashboarding, instead of having it as a screens or anything, it should have the ability to have text to speech. So I can have Alexa in my machine in each and every executive director, by which they can just ask her and then it will answer them. Whether it is a report, kind of a question, like an informative kind of data, like what is RTA budget for this year, for example, or a question of the future, like I have an additional fund from this entity, whether or not should I accept it, for example. So this kind of idea, it's somehow wild, but I think with the existing technology, we can reach to at least some level of that technology soon. Yeah. So this is our plan for the future. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So maybe to expand this discussion a bit further, Hisham, can you share with us like an example, maybe a few examples of like, what kind of like, otherwise dormant data you actually, picked up and turned into, the valuable insights, which actually supported the decision-making process. And I believe you had, in this entire journey, touched upon many, sources of data. If you can share a few examples of this, that will really help.
Actually, during the COVID days is the best examples. And we had to take many decisions in very short time. Especially during COVID, like we need to know exactly how many employees, let's say over 50, who are at risk, who are not at risk. Financially, whether to stop, let's say, training activities or stop events or do this much of a reduction here or there, or what will happen to our revenue, for example. So our, let's say, monthly forecasting of revenue helped us a lot to know like the gap between the expected and the actually what happened, because during COVID, tourism has been down, other like kind of activities has been down, even for the decision of, as you know, like Dubai government take a lot of decision of making the economy to boost the economy, so they stopped some fees or they reduced some fees and all these things. So what is that impact on the cash flow? Because at the end we are government, so we need to have cash in bank to be able to pay to our suppliers, to our employees, to our. So this is like the must, let's say, recent, the most recent kind of utilization of the data, and it was really needful, and with all, again, as I told you, with all the data that we have right now, now people start even thinking. Previously there was like I'm doing budget and I'm focusing only on budget, but with all this spectrum now, I can see like what is the cost of back office versus front office, for example. So when I try to analyze the budget, I can have this data to help me out. Plus, again, treasury in the picture. So again, as I said, data correlation is the key right now. So we need to know the impact. Let's say I increase that fee. Like, for example, there is a new example, which is CIT implementation, for example, which will be implemented next year. So now CIT has to happen. So what will, again, to boost the economy and to relieve the burden over the let's say private sector and all, the government has to take some decisions with the fees and charges and all. So all the what if analysis, how we can do it, we have to do it with these kind of tools.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this was quite impressive. So and this journey has been a long journey. I think it's not also the end of the journey, but you must have faced a lot of challenges, Hisham. So and for the ones like who are undertaking a similar journey at the moment, can you share also some experience about like what challenges you have faced and what measures actually help you overcome these challenges?
Of course, whenever we have a change, there is a lot of resistance here and there, especially whenever you are doing a kind of major reforms like this. And we follow the normal POSI kind of change management, the ADKAR model. Like you give them awareness, you give them knowledge, you give them trainings, you give them desire, like this system will help you this and that, and you give them the ability to work on the system, and then you start to enforcing. So the idea here is that first of all, you have to gradually accept that you should have a tolerance of acceptance of errors here and there. Like, when we started, you remember when we started our budget journey, we used to give the entities, let's say, tolerance of 30% of when they submit their budget. Previously, they used to submit an Excel sheet. If, let's say, the ceiling is 1 million, they can submit 10 million. Nobody will tell them anything. When we started the system, we didn't say, no, 1 million means 1 million at the beginning. At year one, we accepted even 1.5, we accepted 1.6. And then gradually, year by year, we start to reduce the tolerance. Now we don't accept more than 1 million, for example. So that's the gradual acceptance of or to have a tolerance of acceptance is one thing. Second thing is to enforce the change. At the end, you do everything, but you have to have the power from top management, from your steering committees, from whatever is the case. But the enforcement is one of the most important steps in the change itself. So I don't accept any budget submitted if it is not in the system, for example. Or I will not accept any change on your budget in GRP unless it is from system, for example. So you will not be able to release your POs because you didn't submit your budget. So these kind of things, but of course you have to follow all the other steps. You have to give them trainings, you have to give them awareness, you have to fix also, like we did at least 300 enhancements, for example, for our systems. So I mean, like, you have to listen to them, of course, give surveys, do whatever you need to do to make the systems better. But still, the enforcement piece, I believe, is the most, let's say, important step in the change itself of the digitalization. Once they start using it, then they will start feeling the benefits, and then they will even start giving ideas on how to enhance the process here or there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very correct, and that reminded me this famous saying, what was it? A culture eats strategies breakfast.
Yes.
So I think we have to be aware of culture, and we have to be aware of the pace of change, and we have to, modify our change management approach according to this. Thank you very much for sharing all the experience and insights, Hisham. This was very inspirational, to be honest. So Bianca, maybe we can introduce the next panelist.
Sure, go ahead. Before we move into it, we actually have some questions for Hisham. Hisham, there's a question from Vijendra. He says, I believe that the cost of managing the data during its entire life cycle should exceed the tangible business value it brings to the organization. So what kind of business insights were generated, and what kind of business decisions were made using these insights, and how were they measured in a tangible form?
If I understand the question correctly, is that whether or not these data kind of projects will generate benefits to the business or not. That's how you should start these kind of business projects. This is what I understand from the question. If I am correct, I will continue the answer. Yeah.
Okay.
So the idea is that, of course, all these projects which before we started, we did full kind of feasibility studies, current state assessments, and gap analysis. And as I said, before we do any kind of IT change, we actually do that change from business side first. So before we did any planning and budgeting automation, we started the same process using Excel sheets and because it is not only changing system, you change the culture, you change the process itself. So we did the full process without system, full cycle without system, but same. So when we start the system, then the people actually didn't see the change. And of course, now with the information security issues and the great value or the great cost of information leakage or all these things, now having all this data into silos or into share folders or into Excel sheets is a very risky to any organization. As you can see, we have even been hurt ourselves by if one data is leaked, you can see the markets is down, or let's say the trust in the government itself might be touched. So having this data into a robust, secure, and managed system is way important right now for all the businesses. And again, as I said, that's why we didn't start, let's say, full-fledged, for example, data warehouse at the beginning. No, we start with a small data lakes here and there to just get the data available with a very low cost. And then right now, because we need this data correlation, we need this maybe to have a new AI or machine learning kind of algorithm based on this data. So we will start this data, let's say, more data projects. So we start small, we get the value, and even we sometimes fail fast also. Sometimes we get the value, we get the information, and they said, no, we don't need this. Unless we close it, but we didn't spend much. So we start small, and then we move on. If we see value from business side, we make it bigger. So if I answered that, I hope I answered the question the way it should be.
Thank you, Hisham. We have one more question. We have purchased, this is from Rahul. We have purchased RPA with some high expectations 2 years ago, but its use cases remained limited. Can you elaborate what kind of cases are you thinking for RPA?
No, actually, our cases, because again, we are central government, so all our cases might not be applicable for others. So our cases was related to intercompany transactions, for example, or consolidations, or some treasury kind of functions, like we are generating many kind of intercompany transactions. So instead of one person doing this, we use the RPA for it. So again, our RPA use cases might not be again applicable for, let's say, an organization which is not central as us. But this is our RPA use cases, and we are even thinking to elaborate more on RPA into IT itself, like the main functions of security stuff, user management reviews, and all. It can be done for RPA. We started also from government point of view, from DDA, they started the AP RPA processing, like for payments and invoicing and all. For the normal invoice of DO or DIWA and all, it can be done through RPA. So I believe this is a good use case. We have many use cases actually in the government of Dubai, not by DOF, by other entities, which was very successful actually.
Okay. Thank you so much, Hisham. Hope that answered the question. Now, I would like to call on Gary Brocklehurst, ERP Strategy and Business Development Leader from Oracle, to join in on the conversation. Gary, over to you.
Hello, Gary.
Okay, thank you very much for hosting me today. It's so yes, I actually live in Dubai, so I've been here about 4 years now, and I lead the strategy for ERP in the region. So it's great to be here. Really excited.
We're happy to have you here.
Hi, Gary. And nice to see you again. Nice to speak to you again. So we know Oracle has made significant investments in its ERP, EPM, these decision-making systems, and they are focused in harnessing the hidden value of the data, basically, that is normally locked up in those systems. Maybe if you can tell us about what's happening recently in Oracle front, what kind of improvements and enhancements we have seen in Oracle product portfolio.
Okay, well, let me just share my screen so that we can I can show you some visuals that might help the discussion.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so let me just present this. So we'll start off with a simple one. Okay. 7,500 AI IPM. What links those all together? Well, actually, we spend a lot on R&D every year. I mean, it's in the billions. So, where does it go is the question. And actually, in our cloud products, we've delivered across ERP, HCM, CX, EPM, actually 7,500 new pieces of functionality in the last 2 years. So we're delivering every 90 days around about 1,000 new features into our cloud applications. Now, that's not the only thing that we're doing it, but it's a big part of the innovation. We spend a lot of money also on making our solutions easier to implement, so faster to implement, so that people can get the value quicker. We also spend a lot of money on, because we're hosting the applications. They're in the cloud, so they're in our cloud data centers. So investment in cloud data centers in the region, particularly in the UAE. So we've now got 3 within the UAE, and making it easy for us to run those systems and for them to be secure, etc., etc. But certainly, around the 7,500 new features, I think it's kind of well known that they're delivered every 90 days, so our customers are able to adopt those very, very quickly. And I think it's well known that 70 to 80% of those new features are generated by our customers. So we have a cloud customer connect portal where people can post ideas, and those ideas get turned into new features in the solutions. And that's about sort of 70 to 80%. The other new features are really around the kind of the flagship, directional architectural changes that we're making into the product. And AI is kind of one of those big ones, and that spans across all of ERP, HCM, and EPM. So, for example, even now we've had this for 2 years. We're using AI to help people decide, it's kind of a topical question, whether to pay an invoice, a supplier, or put it in the bank. So we're able to look at the cash flow and help people make those decisions. But when we talk about AI, we kind of just, everything's AI. If you turn on the TV these days, everything, it's all about AI. AI is everything. But what we're really talking about is AI and machine learning. And the machine learning part of it is really where the magic happens, really. AI, machine learning, data science is really, where we're able to use those emerging technologies to make a big difference, which is why we come to IPM. So we're using a lot within the EPM world. We're using a lot of those components to create something which we call IPM. Okay, and IPM stands for Intelligent Performance Management, and I'll explain what that is right now. So intelligent performance management really is all about moving from analysis to action as quickly as possible. Okay, so let's look at the graph on the right hand side. So a typical accounting cycle, planning cycle, we do data load, we do reconciliation, we do aggregation, and then we do the data analysis and the review with the business. And then we take action on issues and highlight opportunities. So in the old spreadsheet world, of which actually there's a lot of people still working in the spreadsheet world, we spend a lot of time on data load, reconciliation, very little on analysis, very little on action. So, those customers that have adopted EPM have really made a huge improvement in, the data load, reconciliation, aggregation. All of that is a lot more automated. We spend a lot more time on that collection aspect, which is why, the big benefit of going to EPM was that we then had more time to do analysis. But I think with the, the growth of the amount of data and the expectation from the business, we're actually needing now to spend a lot more time on the analysis. And, we looked at that a couple of years ago, and we could see that analysis time was taking longer and longer as data became more complex. And we said, could we use AI, machine learning, data science to help us to reduce that? And that's exactly what we've done. Okay, so what's next? And we've just going to release the first big release of that in the end of last year, is intelligent performance management. So, this is the kind of term that people will be very familiar with, I think, in the coming months as it starts to gather momentum. Okay, so it's EPM, but with data science, AI, and machine learning embedded in. So with this, clearly the benefit is we're taking less time in analysis. We have more time then to meet the business, We're more time to highlight issues, fix issues, highlight opportunities, embrace opportunities, and exploit those opportunities much better than we do today. So let's kind of understand a little bit about what's going on. So let's just quickly delve into the world of data science. Okay, so if I'm a data scientist, I'm doing things on the left. So, typical data science, you would take a load of training data, you would run some data science algorithms, of which there are many algorithms that have existed for decades. And then you produce an analysis model, okay? Those analysis models can then be used on new data to deliver predictions and insights. And that's exactly what we've done. We've taken some out-of-the-box analysis models that we've created, and we've embedded them within EPM so that the new data already understands the relationship between the different components and then can generate predictions and insights. And that is what we call Oracle IPM, and it's part of our EPM suite. Does that make sense, Alp? Does that
Absolutely.
kind of explain what's going on?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Gary. I think this was quite insightful as well.
So let me just explain some of the insights that we can do that's coming out of the box. Okay. So in the first release, and we'll talk a bit about roadmap perhaps later. We can do forecast variance and bias insight. So this is looking back to see how well we did in terms of our forecast versus the actuals, and the ability for the machine learning to identify bias within the forecasts, because we know that people either under forecast, over forecast, they continually do that, and we can identify that over a period of time, and then we can kind of filter the bias out and actually get a kind of a true value of variance within the system. The other one then is prediction insight. So this is forward looking. So we've generated a predictive forecast, and then what we can do is match that against the actual forecast that's been delivered by the business, and predict to see whether actually our human forecast is close to our predicted forecast, and if there is some variances in that, where are the hotspots and where can we take action now to make the forecast more accurate. And then the last one is anomaly insight. So this is looking for sudden volatility or maybe missing data that might be in the system. But this is very clever, because what we have to do before we can get the true anomalies is filter out the trends and the seasonality, so that we end up with a residual data that we can actually then analyze for anomalies. So these are the three ones that are out of the box right now in the first release, which came out in November of last year. Just to give you an idea of what it might look like. So when you turn IPM on, the machine learning will go through all the data that's there. It's good to have kind of, a couple of years of data there to be able to predict a year in advance. Not essential, but it's a kind of the best practice. And so it will come back with all of the insights that it's found within those three categories. So as you can see, it's found some forecast variance and bias insights, prediction insights, anomaly insights. And we simply just, drill down into those insights, and it will give us the root cause analysis of those. So it will provide us with this kind of graph, so we can drill down into finding out the root cause of the hotspot. And these are called univariant predictions. So in the first release, we're doing univariant predictions, and we'll talk a little bit maybe about multivariant predictions, which involve multiple other inputs that we can bring in from external causal factors. We could talk about that maybe in a few minutes. So this is a bias, a variance and bias root cause analysis. This one is a prediction. analysis, just give you an idea. And these are all out of the box. Okay, so these are delivered with your 90-day updates. These come as standard. So, you know, those that are keen to start to explore this, all they need to do is turn it on. You have to use the Redwood interface because that's the kind of the most rich interface that we have in the system. And then all of this is available to you. So that's kind of all I had, just to kind of introduce the subject of IPM.
Thank you very much, Gary. We have actually, started actually using some of these features in our most, recent implementations, and they are, very, very impressive. I mean, they add a new layer of, understanding of basically data that the organizations have. So they can actually, like users can actually literally, with the click of a button, create predictions, create, complex forecasts, based on, their historical data and these algorithms that we feed into systems. So Oracle's, we understand, committed to bring basically these analytics functionalities, AI, machine learning into the core of its applications. So, and you have a roadmap, I understand. So can you share what else we are going to see soon in Oracle world?
Absolutely. So, the first thing to say is that the IPM at the moment is available in the planning modules. So it's available in sales planning, will be shortly available in strategic workforce planning. So part of the roadmap is to then make those available in the other processes within our EPM suite. So FCCS, tax, ARCS, account reconciliation, profitability, cost management. So you'll see those appearing in those other modules as we go forward. But this slide here kind of explains some of the kind of major elements that are coming on the roadmap. And they're all this new technology is really supporting and enriching what we can do at the top level there, which is kind of where the business user sees. So better predictions, better simulations, better correlations, better insights, the ability to find those hidden numbers. Never mind the time it saves. Sometimes you might not even see the correlation. So this will help uncover that as well. But I want to just focus on number 3 and number 2 here. So number 3, ML model import allows us to bring in extra models. So other than the ones that we provide out the box, from kind of any data science cloud platform that you have. So you could export some causal data, some driver data from EPM, or you could bring some other data in from, citizen data, demographic data, GDP growth, whatever you might want, climate, and put that into a data science platform. Oracle has a data science platform. We have an autonomous data warehouse. We have Fusion Analytics Warehouse. All have this available. And then being able to import that model through something called, a PMML language, which is the predictive modeling markup language, to bring import that back into EPM, and then drive things like multivariant predictions, maybe do some classification predictions. At the moment, the only predictions that we're supporting are regression analysis. So as we go through the roadmap, we'll start to introduce classification analysis, and classification analysis will allow us to deliver that use case that was already mentioned about cash flow forecasting. So being able to do cash flow forecast, based on, is a customer going to pay an invoice? Am I going to pay a supplier invoice? That binary choice. How does that then affect my cash flow forecast? That's actually quite a difficult problem to solve, and that's going to be, in a future release, basically. The other thing that's coming is the AutoML engine. So the AutoML engine, which we're going to basically, these are available within the data science cloud and autonomous data warehouse. Those will go within EPM. So this allows you to take your own data, for the system. It's like having a data scientist embedded in EPM. It'll be able to choose the right algorithm, create the model, and create the functions automatically. So that's a really exciting development as well. And those are some of the things that are coming. So that's all I had from a roadmap perspective.
Very exciting indeed, Gary. So this looks like a solid roadmap. I think we will see many exciting features coming into Oracle application portfolio. So in the context of public sector, though, like, what do you think? How do you think public sector will benefit from all these new features and advancements in Oracle portfolio?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning. It's the volume of data that is present. There was a study from Forbes recently that said, currently we're creating 2 times the amount of data today within 2 years. So every 2 years we double the data. It's actually predicted, and I don't know whether this is true, that by 2025 we'll be doubling the amount of data every 12 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's true, but if it's a day, if it's 2 days, it sounds an awful lot of data to me, which means, currently we're only really analyzing 70% of the data we have today. By 2025, we're only going to be analyzing a fraction of the data if we use the techniques that we currently use today. So this is kind of a must-have. We have to have this. We have to be able to use machine learning that can do these pattern recognitions within seconds to be able to manage this data. The other thing is, and as you've just seen, the importing from external data science areas, it means that the collaboration now, because the data science is only really useful if it's within a business application like EPM and it's used by finance people to drive business problems. Data scientists sitting in IT don't really make an impact. It's only when it's part of an application. So the collaboration between data scientists, analysts, and business users will become, much richer. And I think that's going to be a fantastic development. And then the last one really is show that kind of dashboard of hotspots. Being able to have all the hotspots visible in one place, I think is make a real huge impact in terms of how we look at the data across all of the government entities and how it all interacts. So, I think in 5 years' time, this will be the norm. Everybody will be using this. Yeah, you have to make it accessible to everybody.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gary. I guess we've got some questions, Bianca.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much, Gary, for sharing your insights. We have one question for you from Ronaldo. It says, we have developed various algorithms to predict our service revenue. We want to make use of this data in our budget preparation. Can we integrate our algorithms with our budget with Oracle?
Yes, I mean, in this future, well, actually, the import is available now. So as long as in that data science platform you created this model, you can export that as a PMML, a predictive model markup language file, which is industry standard. Then you can use the ML import, and then you can use that as part of your prediction. So you can predict the budget, and then you can actually then map that against what the budget is, what the human planned budget is, and compare, where the hotspots are, where the variances are, where the issues are that you need to go back and so yeah, you can do that today as long as you've got Oracle EPM Cloud. Yes, you can absolutely do that, and I'd be very excited. I'd be quite keen to understand how you get on. We're kind of looking for interesting use cases that we can share with development. So if you actually get that to work, then I'd love to be able to share that with our development team and see how it made an impact.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope that answered the question. We have another question here for Mr. Hisham and Mr. Gary. So it says here, we are assessing the risk and benefits, Mr. Hisham, as a government organization. Have you done such study, or have you implemented or considered implementing cloud systems? And Mr. Gary, we're a government organization in UAE. How can Oracle assure our data security? So if Mr. Hisham, you want to start?
Oh, thank you, Bianca. It's quite a question. Actually, the issue, as you know, like for government entities, we follow this DISC, which is Dubai Electronic Security Center. We actually spend our last 2 years tightened and doing controls on over security to make sure that our application as per their standards. Moving to cloud, it has many kind of, let's say, controls and restrictions, but saying so, as Gary mentioned in his presentation, all the development is now happening for all the vendor is from the cloud area. So we should not put something on our eyes and then we say, no, we'll keep our systems on premise and in the safe way. No, we are actually exploring the cloud. We did a lot of pilots with Oracle and with some vendors, and we are exploring the move, but still the decision is not yet taken. But what I'm saying is that cloud, of course, is the future, but to take that step, we have to have a lot of, let's say, prerequisites that all the vendors has to provide to us in order for us to make sure that, of course, Oracle and many other vendors having now a data center in UAE, they have maybe DR in UAE or not. This is something like we need to discuss. Like they have some rules. Once these rules are there, we can go to cloud. It's not like a no, definite no for us, but the step itself, it has to, we cannot go one system alone, because as you can see, our system is totally decoupled together. So we cannot just go as, let's say, planning and budgeting without ERP, for example. So if ERP moved, then yes, definitely we'll move with them. So this is the about the decision. It is delayed because of that decoupled kind of features. But Gary, of course, can answer this better.
Yeah, I mean, well, in terms of security, it falls into two buckets. One is data sovereignty, and we've solved that by building data centers in the UAE. That data sovereignty issues kind of that's kind of fixed, and I think most of the government institutions already kind of recognize that. So now they can kind of really move forward with that kind of behind them. And the second one is obviously about security, around security from attacks. And I think it's generally accepted that actually, cloud data centers like ours, we spend millions on those. They're automated, they're roboticized, they're self-patching. There's very little human interaction in there. They're embassy grade. They're far more secure than you could actually build yourself and maintain. It's just not possible these days for an individual to build a data center on their own that has the same level of security that a cloud data center has. So from those two perspectives, those coming together has really unlocked the opportunity for governments to move forward with cloud and to take advantage of all this emerging technology, machine learning, AI, etc. It unlocks all of that for these, and the continuous innovation that is just so important these days.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot, Gary, for answering that. So I think that's all the questions that we have. I would like to thank Alp, Hisham, Gary for having very valuable insights that you shared with us today. And thank you to all our participants for taking out the time out of their busy schedules to join us. Hope everyone did take something valuable out. Thank you very much and have a great day, everyone. We end the session with this.
Thank you
very much. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.